You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 42 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. With me, as always, is Matt Lowe.
What's up?
The Scourge of Brooklet, Jessica Salaji.
Hello.
Scourge.
Word of the week. Scourge.
What's the actual definition of scourge?
Dave?
Right? Punt to the old guy.
Punt to the old guy.
Oh, let's see.
Urban Dictionary says it's the scum of the earth. And a disgrace to the world.
Well, disgrace is... Why are you going to Urban Dictionary for this stuff? Because you could find really, really bad definitions for stuff.
Well, when I Googled it, that's the first one that came up, so...
So I've got, historically, it was a whip used as an instrument of punishment.
Appropriate.
Also, a person or thing that causes great trouble or suffering.
I've been called worse by better.
As a verb, you are whipping someone as a punishment. Synonyms are flog, whip, beat, horsewhip, lash. Man, I'm not going to try that word. Strap, birch, cane, thrash, belt, leather.
Well, I'm going to guess like 20% of the listeners are turned on right now, Matt.
Right.
This is a good time to remind everyone that these are our views and not necessarily those of All on Georgia. Now that we got that out of the way, how was y'all's week?
Lovely. Lovely. You?
Oh, I'm on the right side of the grass. Now bringing heat to the people.
Man, I was busy. I had to work this weekend. I didn't get to go hunting. Then we had family pictures that we did Sunday, and I don't know if you, for anyone that has just one or two kids, you understand how big of a pain in the ass that is. And then when we had all 7 of ours, plus my sister and hers.
Do you know how inexpensive a TV is nowadays to put in your bedroom?
Yeah, man, they're like, I don't know, $150 for a good 4K 32-inch.
Yeah, I mean, something to keep you occupied.
Nah, it's more fun.
No, what's funny is last weekend, so Connie's got the flu, and she's coming out of it now. But we had made reservations in Chattanooga, and they would not, because she came down when they got the diagnosis after the cutoff, and we were going to lose, a good amount of money canceling. So, being hard-headed as she is, we'll just go. So, we're, quote, having a good time, sitting in a bar, watching a game on TV, and listening to live music, and somebody that Matt has been having an argument on Facebook walks in and sits at the table next to me.
Who?
Bob Hansen. So that was funny because actually what I saw was I saw Bob check in because Bob's in Chattanooga a lot. He has a second home there and I believe a rental home there as well. But I'd seen him check into Hi-Fi Clyde's, and then I saw Dave check in, and I was like, "Hey, Bob's there." Did he come over and say hey?
No, I went up to him. I figured it'd be better if I went over to him, not being the infected person instead of having him come to our table.
Right. No, I like Bob. He's a nice guy. I've sat down and talked to him many times in person.
He's just dead wrong about bump stocks.
Right.
Which he's allowed to be. That's the beauty of our country is you're allowed to be dead wrong. But yeah, in fact, I think he was wearing the same sweatshirt as he has in his profile picture, so he's pretty easy to pick out.
Right.
Of all the gin joints in all the world.
Yeah, that was funny.
Well, we got our election results last week, and I so wish that this show was like in a studio with a board that I could take that sound and just put a button in front of me and just be able to hit the button. Ugh. But yeah, elections on the rocks. It ain't no big surprise.
You know, I was a little surprised.
Were you? I think that, as much as I liked Smythe Duval, I think that Barrow's best chance was on election night because he suffered immensely from Stacey Abrams, first of all, carrying on her nonsense for a week and a half after the election. I had people tell me, I voted for Barrow in the November election, but I'm not voting for him in December because I don't want the Democrats to play these games. Even though that's irrational and, he distanced himself from Abrams. He never commented on what she was doing. He didn't support it. He didn't do anything. But people still associate it with it because they're tribal. And I think that hurt him tremendously. I think people who voted for him deliberately voted for Raffensperger even though they did not like him. Right. But I do want to congratulate him on purchasing his seat. I mean, congrats.
Right. It only cost $1 million.
I bet it's closer to $1.5 million when we get the numbers in January.
You think?
I mean, how do you spend $800,000 in the primary and nothing in the general? I know he got to coast on the R, but still.
Well, he didn't show up to the debate, and the most telling picture was John Barrow debating in an empty podium.
My favorite part about that is that they literally would be like, okay, it's time for a rebuttal. Okay, do you want to, counter that? They played it like he was there but not saying anything. It was phenomenal.
It cracked me up.
It was beautiful. And then they're like, Barrow, would you like to ask a question of your opponent? Please go ahead. And then Barrow just pontificated, and they're like, it's time for a rebuttal. It was beautiful.
It reminds me of the Steve Martin show when he had the Pips on without Gladys Knight. And they sang Midnight Train to Georgia, but they didn't sing her part. Her part, they went to an empty spot on the stage because she didn't show up or something like that. So it was just the Pips.
Well, I can only hope to be so great someday as to allow someone to debate an empty podium on my own stage sometime.
Right.
And I heard it floated out that he didn't show up because of his internal polling was showing that he's so far in the lead that all he could do was hurt himself.
Well, if you saw how he performed at the debate in November, yeah, he'd hurt himself. He's unqualified for the seat. He's not a good speaker, and he doesn't have any people skills. So, that doesn't really pan out well on a stage.
You really, really, really need to work on,
back.
Getting yourself out there. I don't know what we're going to do to get you come out of your shell.
I'd tell it to his face.
No, I know you would. And that's exactly why he didn't show up to the interview with you.
Is that why?
Well, the fact that you're unapologetic and you'll ask real questions. Yeah.
I spent the last 8 years basically trashing Kemp as Secretary of State. So I've never had a friend in the Lieutenant Governor's office, and I've never had a friend in the Secretary of State's office. So cheers to continuing the traditions.
But who showed up for the interview?
Kemp, which I think says so much about him.
I'm
sorry.
No, I was about to say one of the things we learned last week with the eulogies of Bush 41 was you can't hold a grudge in politics. He didn't hate anybody. It's just you can disagree, and then the worst thing, Kemp knew the worst thing he could do is ignore you and just say no.
Well, and not only did he show up to one interview, he showed up to two, and I actually have one scheduled this week for one kind of like on his plan. Like, he continues to be that person. He didn't just do it to avoid the political blowback of not sitting down for an interview. Like, that's just who he is. That's not what the others can say.
Right. Well, and that's and I've said it before, and about Raffensperger, is if you have to be that managed as a candidate, you really don't have any place in politics. It's embarrassing if you won't show up to a debate. As a politician, and as somebody who debated in school and stuff, you should be chomping at the bit to get out there and put your point of view out there. But if you're so managed that you've got consultants telling you what your opinions are, and you can't remember what they told you to say that are your actual opinions, what do? You go and you hide. And it's the feeling that's what we did. I really should not be bashing the guy that holds my license, should I?
Well, as we learned in the general election, he doesn't actually have too much control over it. He's just a figurehead. My thing, and I guess we will find out in the coming years, is why did he want this seat so bad? What does he need done? What does he want to control so badly that he bought this seat?
Well, I'm guessing that it's not the governorship.
He will never be governor, let me tell you what.
No, well, not running from interviews and running from debates, you're not.
Not in this state, never.
I mean,
that's a promise.
That's a promise. No, if you can't show up to a debate and you can't debate well and you can't put your ideas, Stacey Abrams would have eaten him alive.
I take it back. I would love for him to run for governor against Stacey Abrams.
I might like to see him in the primary. I certainly don't want to see him run against Stacey Abrams because I don't want Stacey Abrams. Maybe the other Stacey.
Right. Yeah. The problem with political jokes is they get elected, so.
Man, what country was that elected a comedian who played a president?
It was America.
No, I can't remember what country. It was South America. It would be the equivalent of us electing Dana Carvey because he did impersonations of H.W. It was absurd. I mean, it was great from a comedic standpoint, but it was one of the countries in South America that did that. But speaking of that race, Barrow was rather gracious in defeat. And I think he was very conscious of the damage that Abrams did to his party with her statements and her dragging this out and her continued legal actions that are still out there, and going ahead and calling it early, saying, look, there's technically, mathematically a possibility, but in the real world there really isn't.
I think it was the classy thing to do. They sent out press releases overnight, like after election night, late, saying, we don't know how many absentees are out there. It seems like there's a lot. We're going to make sure every vote is counted. And then, Barrow's press release said, there's more votes than the margin of error, but it's unlikely that I would get all of them. So I've offered my congratulations. Like, that's the right thing to do.
Right. That's that's what everybody wants to see.
And Lindy Miller really went above and beyond, saying, I've said I'll help. I've said I'd like to be a part of the future. And whether that actually happens or not is really irrelevant. It's more, I shouldn't say irrelevant, but I think it speaks volumes about the message she's trying to send, that okay, it's not this whole my president, your governor, my governor crap. It's at least the perception that this is something we're all going to have to deal with, so let's do it.
Well, it's also getting back to the healing. It's over. The other guy won, and the cynical part of me says they want to have some political capital for the future and run for another office. And if you go pitching a fit, stomping off like Lucy from Peanuts, going, I know what I've been insulted, like Stacey Abrams is doing, she's really expending all her political capital in this state.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, whether or not that's on the forefront of their mind, I don't know. But it certainly seems like they will both respect Miller and Barrow going forward, even if we don't agree with everything they have to say, as quality people who show some grace.
And if they chose to run again, in their minds of Republicans, they would just be a problem because they're Democrats, not because they, took advantage or it exhausted us all or made our inboxes members of the Me Too movement. I mean, they are still respectable people.
And, we've got a commissioner here in Paulding County, Vernon Collette, that was voted out. And I cannot imagine anybody being more gracious than he is. He's his opponent that won. He's had him in on meetings. He's had him in on filling him in, helping his replacement hit the ground running. And there is no more gracious way of handling something than doing that. Is saying, hey, let me help you do the job you took from me. And politics doesn't have to be ugly. It's more entertaining doing what we do for it to be ugly.
Yeah, it is.
No, and I view our role in this little endeavor as calling balls and strikes regardless of who's at bat and who's pitching. Is call them like we see them, and those two Democrats showed a lot of class the other night.
I agree.
Well, speaking of balls and strikes.
You and your sports metaphors. I hunt through sports season, and Jessica's like, what?
Yeah, pass.
Whitfield County magistrate judge and a convicted felon. This was a... all right, so Shanna...
This is a doozy.
Yeah, this is a doozy. And I had to read it like 3 times to get it. It reads,
get the characters right?
Yes. I mean, I felt like I was watching stories with my grandmother.
Well,
like, who's that guy again?
This article was in the Times Free Press, and while the investigative side was a very good piece, I think that they would have been better off saying the judge, the inmate, the husband, because the last names were impossible to keep up with. I had to keep scrolling up and being like, okay, wait, who's the judge?
Right.
It was confusing. But
No,
anyway, carry on.
It was. No, absolutely it was. Is they kept using the last names. Okay. Shanna Byers Vineyard, who is a magistrate judge in Whitfield County.
For now.
I bet she resigns.
Married for now. Was having
Is she married? I thought she was going through a divorce.
She is now.
No, wait. Maybe I read something wrong. But I thought part of the stuff in there was that some of this came out.
Matthew, I understand that you read this 3 minutes before the show started.
Oh, no. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm getting this confused with the story I read earlier about Glenn Richardson and Daniel Stout. My bad.
Oh, no.
So much love to go around
this
in
is,
the days of our lives.
This is good radio right here. The wheels slowly turning in Matt's head.
Zip it, Dave.
So, this judge strikes up a relationship with, I guess, a supporter. 30-something-year-old dude who lives with his mom. Intravenous drug user.
Gamer.
Yeah, I mean, look. He's got charm oozing out of his pores right now. Either that or that's opiates. she strikes up a relationship with this guy, and just to get me recall this right, she was in another guy's Facebook pictures that was her trainer.
Right.
And her boyfriend took offense. The inmate
the
took
felon.
offense to the angles that this guy was using, and started texting the personal trainer, claiming to be the husband.
Right.
That's right.
Ultimately threatening this guy's family.
Right. And at some point, the judge, the woman, Vineyard, took out a warrant against the felon. And now they're saying, she may have falsified information because she was claiming, to cover her tracks, she was claiming that he was harassing her and, causing problems when she was a consenting party.
This is what you get. Women say they like bad boys. Here it is right now. 38-year-old, intravenous drug using, gaming, lives at home with his mom. That's your bad boy right there.
No, I thought I read that he got kicked out of his mom's house.
Oh, he did at one point, and she put him up in a hotel.
Yes, the judge.
The judge put up the felon drug user kicked out by his mama in his late 30s in a hotel room.
So, man, I want to know how that started.
Find out when the Lifetime movie version is released.
Right? I mean, because Homeboy's got some game. It's really... Wow.
He's a Trump supporter. I don't know if you saw that. He submitted his own photo. I love it. He submitted his own photo for the article, and it's in front of a Trump flag, and he's in a jean jacket, which I just find it hilarious. You're at the center of a scandal, and you're like, hey, can you use my best photo? Here, let me,
right.
What's your email?
I actually respect that. Because if you let Matt pick your photo, it will be the worst possible angle.
Hey. I may have learned that from somebody.
What?
No.
Some people just take bad photos.
Right?
Can't help if every photo is bad on the internet.
No, this guy, the picture he chose, apparently shooting up Roxy's are pretty good for you because he looks like, he's in pretty good shape.
Well, when you're in prison,
you've got time to.
You got time to.
You work on you. You spend
right.
time on you.
In between the rapes, you can really lift.
Right.
And get sober. And how is this learned member of the bar busted? She is on tape. She's recorded talking to him from jail. And I believe that most people know, and it's probably disclosed, that when you get that phone call from an inmate at the Whitfield County Jail, it's going to be recorded. And her only defense, I think, in the transcripts I read was, don't use my name, but yes, I love you.
Jeez.
Who doesn't know that jail conversations are recorded? And you're a judge.
A judge who's probably used recordings in court proceedings before.
Right.
Amazing. I don't know what the trailer park is going on in Whitfield County, but that is, from where I'm sitting, amazing. It's great. It really is great. It's like a Lifetime TV series from a single wide.
And she's an attractive lady too. And she's clearly somewhat accomplished. Like, if she managed to get elected, you know?
Right. That's what I'm trying to figure out, is like how that started.
My favorite quote from the article is hers, where she says, "When my world starts falling apart because of your dumbass moves, it's going to be hell to pay."
Right.
And he said,
yeah.
"I love you."
Right.
Well, Matt, the how does that happen? Well, you know, a wife is a lot like a tin roof. If you don't nail it down right, it's going to end up in your neighbor's yard.
Give that woman some nickels.
She's going to need them for defense.
I just, man. I don't know. I guess, like, I've always told friends who decide for whatever reason to endeavor upon an affair that if they're going to do it, they need to do it with somebody who has as much to lose as they do, right? So, like, you know, a married dude cannot be running around with some single woman. You know, especially a crazy one that's going to show up on your door with boiling rabbits at Thanksgiving. You know, like, if you're married and have kids, then likely she needs to be married and have kids. So you've got some equal things to lose. But so I'm trying to figure out why a judge who's married is running around with a felon.
Well, there are rules of cheating. Rule 1 is cheat up.
Well, he did that.
I mean, nobody wants an ugly woman being pulled into court to testify. 2 is never cheat with anybody who's less to lose than you do. And 3 is never in the same zip code, stupid.
Well, and, you know...
And you're a public figure.
Obviously, that's a reason it's, like, hard not to look. I mean, the train wreck aspect of this is entertaining, and all of the pieces that fit so well somehow, like, it's entertaining to watch. But from an abuse of power standpoint, you know, I hope they throw the book at her.
Right, yeah, we didn't get into that, you know, that, like, she had him arrested and took out a warrant for him, correct?
Right.
Yeah, a magistrate judge.
In the name of covering her ass.
Right, a judge went to another judge to have a warrant sworn out and sent to law enforcement to pick him up, yeah.
And the article cites multiple instances in which she, you know, allegedly told detectives information and played the victim card and, you know, it painted this image of him that was borderline dangerous enough for him to be put behind bars. And she was a party to it. I mean, he should sue her.
Right.
But he probably still loves her, and they'll probably end up together, and that'll be the end of the Lifetime movie. And then there'll be a sequel on Hallmark.
Where he killed her in her sleep.
You know,
you must not watch a lot of Hallmark. There's no murders on Hallmark.
Oh, man, people die on Hallmark all the time. You just don't pay attention. I'll give you an example. My wife was watching this Christmas movie. It was something stupid, too, like a Christmas heart for Joey or whatever. And it's all about this dude, right, who needs a heart transplant.
Shocking.
And,
Dave, would you have guessed that's what it was about?
good
right.
Lord.
And so, right there at the very end, you know, you see the plane carrying the donor heart landing on the runway. And my wife's all tears about it because Joe, or who, whatever the hell his name is getting a heart. And I'm like, you know,
Someone had to die to get that heart.
somebody else's family is wrecked at Christmas over this. So she, like, called me bad names and whatnot for ruining her Christmas movie. But people died on Hallmark.
Did he die of rejection, too?
No, I don't know about that.
He rejected the heart on New Year's Day.
That's the sequel.
Yeah, Lifetime and Hallmark. No, that doesn't get played in my presence.
I don't have cable anymore, but I miss marathon Lifetime movies of like wife after wife just ruining the life of her husband or ex-husband.
I always said 50 Shades of Grey would be totally different if it were like in a trailer park instead of him being a billionaire, because then it would be on Lifetime as a movie about survival and evasion.
Didn't they make a Morgan Freeman movie about that, or Alex Cross? To Kiss the Girls.
Kiss the Girls, yeah. Good.
I don't know how we segue to the next one, but you can give it a whirl.
There's no clean segue to that.
To baby Jesus being in a cage.
Mm-hmm.
The baby in the cage could be Lifetime.
Speaking of Christmas, crappy Hallmark movies.
Yeah, speaking of being locked up against your will,
Dedham, Massachusetts has a church has an unconventional take on the nativity scene. St. Susanna's Parish, Dedham. The baby Jesus is in a cage, and the three wise men are behind a wall.
why is Matt laughing?
Because the baby Jesus is in a cage. I'm looking at the picture.
After 7 kids, you don't think one of them ended up in a cage?
Hold on a second. It's not a cage. It's a kennel.
It's a dog kennel.
Yes.
I got a kid in one of those right now.
Did they put some like newspaper down in case baby Jesus has an accident?
As an ex. Look at that. He's like white with blue eyes.
So
With red hair.
Right?
He has like the Farrah Fawcett hair.
That's
too.
not Jesus.
So the message that's on top of this nativity scene says "Peace on Earth?" ? The wise men are meant to be obviously the migrant caravan, and Jesus is meant to be a caged child held by ice.
That's awesome.
Matt, you're a little too pleased by this.
Well,
And this is obviously the first time you're reading the story.
oh yeah. No, that's just awesome though. I mean, first that someone at the church sold this idea and that everybody there agreed with it. Oh.
You know, the pastor of the church, of course, says that Jesus was no stranger to politics. And I don't even know where to go with it, Jessica. I mean, give me your take.
Okay. So my take on this is basically I'm just disappointed that people are using their faith and this nativity scene to springboard something political. Like, if that's your opinion, I mean, I respect it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I just am really, we have so much to argue about, and faith is such an important thing to so many people, and to just intertwine the two, I just, it's disappointing. It's a downer for me, I guess. I'm disappointed.
Well, Dedham is a suburb of Boston. It is southwest of the city. It seems to be, from everything I can tell, a lovely little town with a liberal agenda, apparently.
I guess. I mean, they're free to do what they want. I guess this doesn't even fit within the bounds of political statements either for churches, but it's protected free speech. But I guess it's in poor taste is how I would succinctly offer my opinion.
A surprisingly good statement on that. Yeah, I think it's very well
Right.
said. It's in poor taste. And look, I am all for poor taste. I mean, I've got a whole repertoire of horrible jokes. This one's kind of out of my league. One, it's not funny. And I have a like wide tolerance for funny. If you're trying to be funny and you're trying to make a joke, I mean, I'll give you a lot of leeway on things. As far as, you know, and I'm not gonna say I'm offended. I'm gonna go protest this church. But I have a wide tolerance for funny, and this just doesn't fall in either funny or anything else. And Jessica, you hit the nail on the head. It's just tasteful.
Well, and it's just, I mean, it's getting attention, so I guess we are helping them in the sense that this is what they want, is for people to talk about it. But does it raise awareness? I think it just reflects upon, you know, the church individually. I don't think it doesn't advance the message. It doesn't open anyone's eyes. It's just a political statement by a church.
Right. Well, raise awareness of what exactly? I think I'm not sure there's a person in America outside of, you know, like people who medically don't have access to the news and people who are mentally incapable of understanding what's going on that aren't aware that there's issues at the border. So I don't know what exactly they're raising awareness of. And I say that in thinking that the thing was funny. So,
I mean, if you look at it, it is funny to see. Like, the images are funny because it's not even well done. I mean, you threw a doll with a Farrah Fawcett haircut in a dog kennel and called it Baby Jesus, and I mean, it's funny. But the actual premise of what they did is, I don't understand the end goal.
Well, that's the thing. Kind of where I am on it is, they're trying. I don't know, man. It's just, it seems like the wrong time to put your political message out. It's a time when we're supposed to be coming together. A time we're supposed to be spending time with family. Time that we should be reflecting on what we have. And they decided to take that and turn it into a political statement. And they said it in their interview that it's not. I think the term they used, not necessarily aimed at Trump, but you know, it's one of those sort of statements, because I think they understand they're skirting the political church thing.
I guess, I mean, I agree with everything you said, except that I don't think there's, personally, I don't want to be a part of a church that ever takes an opportunity to seize on a political issue, you know? Like, I'm a faithful person because of the message of faith, not the message of politics that my church offers me. So I would argue that there's not ever a time for churches to proclaim a statement on an issue.
And I agree. There's never an appropriate time to do that. It has not stopped the current pope.
Yeah, well, we don't have enough time for that.
Right. Well, yeah. That's an hour in and of itself. Is the stuff that, you know.
What are you laughing at?
Oh, I would offend every Catholic listener we have if we started talking about that.
So, Jessica, I called you the scourge of Brooklet.
You did.
You were straddled with personal responsibility for all the bad things that happen in Little Brooklet.
I was. And, you know, Brooklet is something that I've talked about on the podcast before. I think I've been writing about it since the end of May. I've now written 20 articles on the police department alone. But after 6 months, thousands of hours of body cam footage, documents, lawsuits that have come, they've now determined that it's my fault. So I'll take a bow. I caused the problems in Brooklet. Basically, the council, I had spoken about the police department, I think, over the summer when I talked about it. And more recently, I've kind of stayed on them to see who they've hired and what types of officers they've brought in after they got rid of the entire department in June. And they have 5 lawsuits that are all civil rights violation based lawsuits that are pending against them. And so I started digging around looking for post-investigation information and previous employment. And I found that one flunked out of the training situation or the training program at a neighboring city. Another one wasn't even post-certified anymore. It had been revoked and he never notified them and they hadn't done their proper paperwork. And so the state was unaware that these people were even working for them. And it's just been a problem after problem. And the council is to blame. We all thought that these bad actors and officers were to blame this summer, and they did a lot of wrong things, but they were a symptom of this disease that is the council that has for a lack of a better phrase, completely piss poor leadership. And they've repeatedly blamed the interim chief who tried to fix it and me. But now, presently at the present time, I am the sole problem and the sole cause of all of this coming to light. So. And
I could totally agree.
I agree as well. But what's funny is that, all the whole thing started because last year in October during their millage rate hearings, they were raising taxes, and some citizen who didn't understand that when you have a millage rate hearing, you can only talk about the millage rate, got up and was like, I was harassed by the police, blah, 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 blah. This is what happened. And he just went into his diatribe. And he's actually, I believe, the first person that I wrote about in Brooklet. But it started with him. He was like my tipster. And then from then on, every piece of information that I've received that I've written about has been because I was given a tip by a citizen inside the city limits. I've not gone digging for any of this. And I'd actually kind of let up on them a little bit. And it was a citizen who called and said he flunked out of this officer flunked out of the department in Statesboro. Can you look into it? We're concerned. So yes, I am the reason that all of it came to light, but the citizens are the ones who initiated all of it, which I think is wonderful.
Now, Matt, how is not being post-certified not impersonating a police officer?
This is a trick question.
Right?
Now, look, you do a job you're not qualified for. But it's a little different when you're taking people and yanking them off the street.
Right. No, I'd have to look and see how the law is written regarding the charge of impersonating a police officer.
I guess if he's sworn in, you or I could be deputized, but that's a different thing.
Well, that's different. That's a sheriff,
right? And that falls under posse comitatus.
Is that a real thing?
Yes,
yeah.
It is. That's the the reason for the Second Amendment is posse comitatus. If I pronounced it right. Of course, no one would know because Latin hadn't been spoken in a couple thousand years.
Right. They only teach it in medical school.
Right. Yeah. Medical school and law school, and even they don't really know how it's pronounced. Anyway, that is the theory that for enforcing laws, if you have to go put down a revolt or you need to go find outlaws, you can deputize a group of armed citizens. That's what when the Second Amendment talks about the militia. The militia in 19th century vernacular meant the armed citizenry that could be called up under posse comitatus. So that's probably a little more explanation that's needed for the Brooklet story, but that's where the term comes from.
Well, I think it's a nice little tidbit that most people probably don't know, so.
Take it from the air conditioning guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're a
so
doctor.
Cool.
I am a doctor. So, they are putting into danger every arrest these people make. So, if I got popped with for anything, for weed in my pocket, and I'm like, obvious, this guy's not post certified, or this guy flunked out of training. All you're doing is causing problems for the prosecutor.
Right.
Well, and you're also causing problems in the lawsuits that are pending, which are 5 lawsuits by 5 different parties, because the whole not the whole premise, one of the many premises of those lawsuits is that the city, knowing what happened to all of those people, made no effort to remedy their policies or their procedures to ensure that it never happened again. And they are proving that day after day. What Dave mentioned about impersonating an officer, basically when this officer's certification was revoked, he continued to patrol, he continued to, act. Even the city is claiming that he didn't write tickets for 45 days, which I'm not sure if I believe or not. I will withhold judgment until I see it for myself. But even if he pulls someone over and does not give them a ticket, he illegally detained them. And everything he does is he can't testify in court. He can't do anything. And the city not only enabled it, but when they found out, I let them know before I published my article. I gave them the courtesy because I thought that was the right thing to do. And that was on a Friday. And several days after, after they found out that his post certification had been revoked, they still hadn't terminated him. And he was still walking around with all his gear and his key to the city hall and his service weapon. So it's just total negligence.
So did the city know that his post certification was revoked?
They say that they did not. I don't know if that's true. I can't confirm it. However, I spoke with Post a number of times, and they send their policy is to send a certified letter to the agency, letting them know. They send a certified letter to the officer, and they send a certified letter to the district attorney's office to make sure that the officer does not testify in court. Now, what's interesting is that the DA's office was notified because the officer self-reported to Post. Like when you do your training, your continuing education, for lack of a better word, you have to say which agency you're with. And so he had self-reported to Post. But Brooklet never told Post that he was working for them. So officially, there was no connection from the city to Post, which is the agency that governs police officers, and so they didn't send a letter. But they were in violation of state law by not notifying Post that he'd worked there. I mean, the whole thing is just a complete breakdown. There's 15 instances that you can point to and say, well, if he had done this wouldn't have happened.
Well,
and it continues to be that way.
I'm a doctor, not a lawyer, but the way things go in court generally is know or should have known. And
right.
Absolutely, the city of Brooklet has the onus on them to background check, including check with Post on their new employees before they hand them a badge, a gun, and the authority to restrict the movements of citizens.
And the reason that people are so upset is that the city council was aware that this officer in question, or he was an officer, revoked officer, whatever you want to call him, this employee was under investigation and was fired from another place for double dipping, and he was indicted by Chatham County Judicial Circuit for 36 felony counts of theft. And the city of Brooklet still, he went through pretrial diversion, which I support that program, but all of this is public record, and the city hired him anyway. And so now the citizens, whether this is what happened or not, the citizens think that the city council just didn't report it to Post because they knew there were problems with this officer, and the city didn't want to be on the record for having an officer that was of a problem. But even if that's not what the city was doing, they've given the optics that they had something to hide because they waited 6 months to even follow through on the state guidelines for reporting officers.
Now, Matt, as our expert at double dipping, when it comes to law enforcement, and you've got a family that's law enforcement, what does double dipping mean?
In law enforcement?
Right.
I don't know. They don't ever do it.
Well, okay.
Okay. So like a good example of double dipping would be to, I think everyone knows that police officers get the opportunity to work part-time jobs as security at, I don't know, the movie theater, bowling alley, whatever, local bars, anything. Directing. I deal with one every day on my drive to school. He directs traffic or stops traffic for a school. But it would an example would be working one of those part-time jobs while he was on duty.
Right, which is stealing from the taxpayers.
Right.
And this officer was required to pay back, I think, $9,000 in wages that he collected simultaneously. So, yeah, and I could probably do like an entire series on podcasts just talking about all the stuff that is relevant to these Brooklet cases that never got written just because there's so much. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a negligent, incompetent counsel. You know, when you have an officer you found out was not certified by post and didn't tell you about it and continued to patrol and deal with your community that you were supposed to protect, and you don't fire him and you let him take the weekend and 3 to 4 days or however long it wants, and you don't terminate him and go collect his equipment, what kind of... You're useless to me.
Right.
At what point should the city be dissolved?
About 3 months ago. And I say that as someone who... Brooklet is the first city that I moved to in South Georgia from Atlanta. It is Mayberry. There's 1,395 people that live there. It's safe. It's beautiful. Everyone is kind. I love it. And this police department and this council have ruined the city. And it's so sad because they're going to be left with nothing. They are going to divide it up and then dissolve it in the sheriff's offices. I mean, it's sad. But you get the government you deserve. The people have got to stand up and do something.
Well, the taxes will go down.
True.
So I looked up the impersonation of a public officer or employee, and I think it probably does fit. And interestingly, I think it would fit not only to like that he held himself out as a peace officer to the city, but I think he could likely be like if someone really wanted to push the issue, he could probably be charged with that for every single person he ever initiated an encounter with.
We can only hope.
And it's each incident would be a fine of up to $1,000, and not less than 1 or more than 5.
So it's a felony.
Yes.
And you get him for
felony.
false imprisonment every time he stops somebody. And you could get the city council for conspiracy to commit a felony.
Right. If he arrested someone, that could be straight up like kidnapping.
Right.
Like there's a lot. The right person's going to get the right lawyer, and the city will be broke when they get done paying that particular lawsuit out.
Well, what needs to happen is the GBI needs to roll down there, I guess.
I want the FBI.
You want the FBI?
Bring the feds.
Oh, don't ever say that ever again.
What?
This is why. The GBI is so political. They're so slow, and they almost... when you have the GBI, it's up to the district attorney to prosecute, and the DA is political too. And we've had case after case and corruption scandal after corruption scandal down here in Southeast Georgia. It doesn't matter what county, where the GBI has findings, and then the DA just lets it sit on their desk indefinitely or puts it on the back burner. The FBI is a totally different beast, and they put our council members in federal prison.
So the attorney is looking for, the district attorney is looking for a sexy case, not a convoluted story about hiring officers that are not qualified to patrol a small town.
The district attorney has had the alleged sexual assault and theft of property of body or deer cameras from the victim's yard on his desk since July and has not done anything. And it involved law enforcement officers. Nothing.
Like sands through the hourglass.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, I think that wraps Brooklet up. It is, in fact, all Jessica's fault.
Right. Blogging hack.
The blogging hack. What is she doing out there, and why is a woman daring to question our decisions in law enforcement? Have you ever walked a beat? How can you criticize?
It's true. Although, much to, I think, my surprise and a lot of other people's, like, the members of the law enforcement community have been overwhelmingly supportive. I mean, there's a few that think I'm the devil, but for the most part, they want these guys they want to make sure they never police anywhere.
Yeah, you know who a good cop hates?
A dirty cop.
A hack who is not post-certified, who's double-dipping, who does everything wrong, who flunks out of training, because there was another cop that flunked him out of training. Yeah, that's exactly who a good cop hates, is a hack.
Right. But I've been pleased because, you know, when we see all these stories about, like, people always say, oh, they never call out the bad apple, blah, blah, blah. They repeatedly are, and it makes me happy just because they're discrediting people who just despise law enforcement for no matter what.
Oh, no, the vast, overwhelming statistic of body cam footage shows that the majority of law enforcement interactions are professional, they are proper. The overwhelming. You know who loves body cam footage? Most good police officers.
Right.
Because they, people love to watch Law and Order and see someone get into a room and smack around a suspect and makes really good drama for TV. But it is not, it's not so good when you're the guy being falsely accused, and body cam footage takes that out.
Right. It's funny, man. I always thought there was a disconnect in my views on what law enforcement should be able to do and whatnot, and my absolute love of the character of Jack Bauer in the series 24.
Man, that thing lost me when he crossed L.A. 3 times in an hour.
Man, whatever. When he shoots a dude in the leg in his own living room to get an answer. No, he shot the dude's wife in the leg. That's what it was. I was like, that's a man who's getting shit done. I wish that show was back on.
And while I've got you guys, it's not on the outline, but I wanted to touch briefly on the city of Statesboro decriminalizing marijuana.
No.
No?
False. They did not decriminalize.
Okay, what'd they do?
I appreciate what you say because that is literally what everyone said, but this is what the city attorney said, and I want your organic reactions to this. The city attorney said this is absolutely not decriminalization because we are creating a new ordinance and a new legal offense that people will be charged under, whereas previously we relied on the state statute. And decriminalize is basically like, is not that. It's not creating a new offense. But he made a statement in the public meeting that this is not decriminalization. We are taking a different step in making our own ordinance. So, carry on.
Now, Matt, and this is a college town.
Right.
And there are probably at least 2 kids running around Statesboro with a little sack of weed in their pocket. This allows officers to issue a citation, charge them, so mom and dad are going to find out. And because, mom and dad are the ones who are going to pay that $500 fine. Without locking them up and, getting them kicked out of school or missing class. Is this a step in the right direction, or is this a new tax on potheads?
Well, that's why I would say that Jessica was very right in saying it is not decriminalization; it's a new law, and it is a tax.
Right. The reason that I don't feel like it's a step in the right direction is, one, because new laws don't grant freedom, and two, they attached a verbal resolution with it, which I've never heard of in all of the meetings I've ever been to in 4 years almost. But they attached a verbal resolution instructing these officers with the Statesboro Police Department to only cite the local ordinance and not the state statute. And I feel like they're going to run into some constitutional issues with that, because police officers, one, are part of the executive branch and enforcers. Two, they answer to the state and they are required to uphold state law. And three, you're talking about a legislative agency directing them to ignore a state law that actually supersedes the local ordinance. I think it's going to create a number of problems.
Right. This is not Colorado versus the United States with the weed laws. There's state law does supersede, and officers are, as we've discussed before on the show, state post certified. They are state officers.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. I mean, I will say I like the discussion that it spawned, and I like seeing how many people are actually in favor of this, especially given where I live in Southeast Georgia's Bible Belt. I mean, Statesboro is becoming more liberal, the county not necessarily, but the city itself is blue. So I guess it shouldn't be too much of a surprise, but I'm glad that the discussion is being had. I just wish they'd gone about it a little bit differently, because it could backfire.
Well, Matt, that's what new laws do. Well, let's go into closing thoughts. Jessica.
So, closing thoughts. Let's see. Send a letter to Brooklet and let them know they suck. I will publish their address on our page.
Matt?
You'll have to send it by fax.
You have to send it by fax. Why? Pony Express doesn't go there? Good.
We didn't talk about that, about how the post office was shut down because of 41, but I guess I'll let it go.
You can't really hang Brooklet with that one.
No, but that's my closing thought. I'd like to add that I think it's ridiculous that we didn't get mail on the Wednesday of the funeral for 41. I mean, may his soul rest in peace, but really?
But he would have wanted us to get our bills.
That's right. He would have.
Man, you know what I thought was so funny about this when we were talking about it? It's like that you apparently used the post office so much that
it was an inconvenience.
Because, like, look, it is an inconvenience for me to use the post office, right? Like, I never mail anything unless I absolutely have to.
Oh man, I hate, like, I've got people that I mail checks to, and I hate it. I really do. I absolutely hate it. Like, man, I'm gonna see you next Wednesday. Can you wait for your money till Wednesday and I hand you the check? Cause I hate writing out.
Peel off a 20.
Peel off a 20. Yeah. I hate it.
Give you some nickels.
That much. having to actually write something down, put a stamp on it, and stick it in the mailbox. And I don't know why, other than my handwriting sucks. Yeah, I have the handwriting of a serial killer.
I have the handwriting of a draftsman. I write in all capital letters, and it looks like Times New Roman when I do it.
I will tell you that 41 would not have wanted the post offices to be closed, and I'll tell you why. He hated things being about him, even as a politician. So he wouldn't have. He certainly wouldn't have suggested that, the government shut down on his account. Right.
Did y'all watch any of the stuff today?
Wednesday?
Stuff pop. I saw some stuff pop up on Facebook, but I didn't have an opportunity to sit down and just watch.
So I saw, I guess when Trump arrived at the funeral, and him and Melania sit down, and they shook the Obama's hands and completely snubbed the Clintons.
Man, I don't think that's what happened. I really, really don't. And you've been to funerals. It's not the time to high five. You're not reaching across people. So the way the pews were, Carter was on the far end.
I'm shocked he's still alive. Well, frankly, too. I heard someone today say that I would just throw him in the casket with George, save some money, because he's next.
Well, I think it was Truman and LBJ died within a month of each other. LBJ died of a heart attack in 73 or 74, and I think Truman was right before or right after that. And only one of them had a state funeral, and the other family decided not to.
Right.
No, so they're all in the pew. So you have Carter on one end, who's 94, survivor of brain cancer. Then you have the Clintons, and then you have the Obamas, and then you have Trump. So for him to really shake their hands and make a deal, he would have to reach over the Obamas, and that would have been a deal. And Melania and Hillary nodded at each other, and Bill was just trying to look forward, not stare at Melania.
Is that what that was? You think?
Oh yeah, that's exactly what that was. And then
I guess I missed the nods.
Yeah, and then it would have been remiss if he didn't acknowledge Carter. So that would have been going out of the pew, walking all the way down, to shake Carter's hand. So the most respectful thing to do is you shake the hands of the people right next to you. It's a church. You sit down, you look forward, you shut your mouth, and you look like you have some reverence for what's going on. So I don't think there was any real snub going on.
You don't think it was a snub?
No, I don't necessarily think they like each other, but man, it's a funeral. I mean, I'm Irish, so you wait till the wake, get drunk, and then fight.
Right.
So no, the what was interesting is he planned his own funeral down to who's going to speak and how long. Like he told a couple of his friends, you have 10 minutes. Keep it within 10 minutes.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting to be kind of that comfortable with it. And I guess you start planning. It's like being a pharaoh. You start planning your funeral shortly after you get out of office as to what kind of things that you would want.
Right.
So anyway, going long on closing thoughts, Matt.
Oh man, my favorite meme out of the whole thing was the fake tweet from H that said he assigned Jeb to be a pallbearer so he could let him down one more time.
Lord.
That was so awesome. That's it, man. I don't know. That isn't my closing thought. Here's my closing thought. Elections are over. Man, it's freaking Christmas time. Y'all stop with the damn politics for a while. Go hang out with your family and friends and stop being assholes.
Dude, are you kidding? You know what was on in between pictures of the funeral and everything else? The election field for the Democrats for 2020.
No, I know. It's going to start in January, which is why I'm saying stop being assholes now.
But I can't help it. No, it's amazing to me that we have somehow graduated. Here's my closing thought. How did we get here? How did we get to the point where we've graduated to a non-stop election cycle? Like, if you want to run in 2020, you're already putting the wheels in motion now. You've already got your search committees up. You're already polling. You're doing whatever else you got to start and raise money and talk to donors and everything else. Now
the new guys aren't even sworn in yet.
Yeah, we're 22 months away from the next general, and they're already ramping up. It's the 24-hour news cycle has ruined a lot of enjoyment. Of just being done with the political cycle. It used to be, it started in March, it was over in November, and that was it. Everybody went back to their normal lives.
Right.
Anyway, for Matt Lowe, Jessica Salaji, I'm Dave Roberts. People suck. Have a good week.